Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I want to provide an update from the city's perspective and provide additional clarity on where we stand regarding social distancing requirements in outdoor spaces. And I'll get to that. And I have Chief Dan Kinsella from Halifax Police here representing Halifax Police and also the RCMP. But I want to first assure you that the business of City Hall is continuing. To continue to practice safe social distancing, there will be 3 virtual special meetings of Regional Council on April the 2nd, April the 14th, and April the 28th, each beginning at 1 o'clock. That means that the regularly scheduled meetings of April 7th and 21st will be canceled. Technology for virtual meetings is being tested, which we hope will allow residents and media to access live streaming video of the meeting while it is underway. Updates on the status of this will be provided prior to Thursday's meeting. One of the agenda items at an upcoming council meeting will be the status of property tax. The municipality is evaluating options for taxpayers and how we can help in a time of need. A notice of motion will be presented on April the 2nd regarding the due date of taxes as an immediate measure. Decisions will be communicated to taxpayers after Regional Council deliberation and in advance of the tax deadline. Regional Council minutes will be available on halifax.ca within 24 hours of the meeting. An audio recording of the entire meeting will be made available as soon as possible. And as I say, we hope that it will be live streamed as well. The agenda and reports for the April 2nd meeting will be posted on halifax.ca by tomorrow, Tuesday, March 31st at 1 p.m. In other news, Halifax Transit has been designated by the province as an essential service under the current provincial state of emergency. In light of this directive, the municipality will continue delivering the highest level of service that can be reasonably provided, while also continuing to take the important steps to help minimize the spread of COVID-19 and to make buses as safe as possible for our operators and citizens. The level of transit service provided will continue to be adjusted as necessary based on available operational resources. For riders who have purchased a March or April transit pass, please keep your passes until further notice. Halifax Transit will update the status of these in coming days. We continue to work to ensure that we're following all public health directives aimed at curbing the spread of coronavirus here in Halifax and in Nova Scotia. As part of that, there is no more than 5 people in this room, including the operators and our interpreters. Now, we support the province's decision to close parks and beaches, and we followed suit with the closure of our municipal parks, beaches, many trails, outdoor sports venues, and playgrounds. At the same time, we continue to support safe outdoor opportunities for people to get fresh air and exercise. But not everybody is getting that message. This past weekend, we had some people disregarding these directives, sneaking into parks, in some cases, even moving barricades aside. This is not acceptable. As well, playing ground hockey and basketball, normally activities that we would encourage, cannot go on due to the way the COVID-19 is spread. We have to be very clear, as the Premier and Dr. Strang and other leaders have been. It is not acceptable to put your personal interests above our collective social responsibility to try to flatten the curve of COVID-19 in our community. Do not go to provincial or municipal parks. Do not take a stroll on the beach or play tennis or swing from monkey bars on the playground. We have worked to keep neighborhood trails that are not inside municipal parks open, but we need cooperation. Do not drive to a trail outside of your neighborhood to go for a stroll or ride your bike. This will only serve to create crowding that flies in the face of the good social, physical distancing measures that we are all counting on now more than ever. It's awful, I know that. It's hard, I know that, but it is absolutely necessary. It is vital that we all recognize our shared responsibility. And make no mistake, this is not a suggestion. We're not asking you. We're telling you. Chief Kinsella is here to answer details around enforcement, but I think you know that we have already begun with hefty fines. Now, in the face of the few, I want to recognize the many. So many people inspire me with their sense of community. We're all witnessing it, apart and yet together. Whether it's Charlie Acortt rocking out to Footloose in his Dartmouth steps, a front yard dance party in Halifax's West End, or the chalked messages and homemade signs of support for Dr. Strang in his own community. We will have each other to thank when we get through this. I also want to just acknowledge once again Halifax Public Libraries, who continue to do great work during this difficult time, reaching new customers every day, and I encourage you to check out the options that are available through the Halifax Public Libraries on the website. On the weekend, I had a chance to walk in my own neighborhood, keeping physical distance and in my own neighborhood, and I saw more and more signs popping up. Chalk signs on driveways saying thank you to our essential workers. A sign that said home is where the heart is. One that said we will make it through together. And we will, but we must do it the right way. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Chief Kinsella to come into the room and to give an update, and then if there are questions, we'll be happy to answer those questions. Chief Kinsella.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by thanking the men and women of the Halifax Regional Police, both sworn and civilian, who are continually showing their dedication to public safety. I also want to thank all healthcare workers, other first responders, and partners who are working hard during this challenging time. We are in the midst of a significant uncertainty and a constantly shifting situation because of COVID-19. The main message that I have for you today is quite simply this: we need you to help us help you. Education remains our top preference during these tough times. But when all other steps have been exhausted, enforcement will follow. I do want to emphasize that the vast majority of people are doing all the right things. The Premier and the Chief Medical Officer of Health have said this as well. People are physically distancing, avoiding social gatherings of more than 5 people, and self-isolating at the appropriate times. But some people continue to take unnecessary risks, very unnecessary risks. We need everyone to educate themselves on what the responsibilities and the expectations are. Our officers will keep doing their very best to ensure public safety, and we want people to focus on fighting the spread of the virus, not the rules to contain it.
Thank you, Chief Kinsella and Mayor Savage. We have a few media who are on the call, and I'll be calling upon a representative from each of the media outlets to ask a question and one follow-up question. We'll start with Rhonda Brown with Global News. Rhonda, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you. My question's for Chief Kinsella. Wondering if the chief can comment on how he may have changed staffing to enforce the social distancing guidelines in the community.
Well, certainly we are making every effort as a police service to ensure that we follow the same rules we expect everyone else to. Social distancing is a very important part of that to our officers to ensure that they can operate with the 6-foot rule. There are occasions, because of the nature of the work, where officers may have to take some action that puts them within that perimeter. And if that occurs, officers have the appropriate personal protection equipment that they will don and use throughout the course of whatever interaction they may be having.
Thanks, Chief. Do you have a follow-up question, Rhonda?
I do. Chief, you spoke a few minutes ago of wanting to provide education to citizens as opposed to enforcement. We saw one example of enforcement this weekend when a woman who had gone into Point Pleasant was charged. What types of situations will your officers look at and choose enforcement over education?
Well, certainly education is the first preference. When the education piece and the compliance piece has been exhausted, that will be the opportunity for the officers to use their discretion in the appropriate circumstances, as the officers did yesterday, and take the appropriate action through enforcement. Really, this is another reminder, and there's been several as we've gone along over the last little while, to say it's time. Everybody knows what the rules are. Everybody knows what the requirements are. And we're here to help, and we want to continue the message. But where required, enforcement will follow, and the appropriate fines and/or other actions will be taken.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your questions, Rhonda. And I failed to introduce myself when I took the microphone. My name is Breton Murphy. I'm the Managing Director of Corporate Communications for the Halifax Regional Municipality. Next, we'll be moving on to ask Pam Berman with CBC to ask her question. Pam?
Hi, I have a follow-up question for Chief Kinsella on enforcement. I'm wondering what the priorities will be for enforcement, and whether it's going to be the one person who, gets on a trail that they shouldn't be on, or whether it's crowded stores, because there seems to be, lineups outside stores where I'm not sure the distancing is being watched as carefully. So I'm wondering where the priorities will be.
Well, certainly we have had a number of enforcement-related COVID calls come into our IES section. Those calls are dispatched in priority with all the other calls and all the other priority calls that we have going on in the city at any given time. The majority of the time, calls are related to public gatherings of more than 5 people, so congregation related issues. So we take every call we get very seriously, and we investigate as appropriate. The majority of times when we arrive, people either disperse immediately and/or they are gone already when we arrive. There has been an increase in the area of shoppers and people that are out doing, whatever it is, commerce-related business they have. The vast majority of shops and stores are also practicing social distancing, allowing those mechanisms in place, and assisting people with markings on the floor and that kind of thing to help them stay 6 feet apart, limiting the number of people within their establishments to 5. So this is going on a regular basis. However, like everything else, there are some that may not be strictly adhering to the rules. In those instances, when we get the call, we will dispatch and we will attend, and we will take the same approach we always have taken and deal with it appropriately.
Thank you, Chief. Do you have a follow-up question, Pam?
Yes, I have a follow-up question for the chief on staffing. I'm wondering if any quarantines or self-isolation or anything like that has had any impact on staffing of your police officers or your civilians.
Well, certainly, like any first responder operation, staffing is of utmost importance during regular times, but in these extraordinary times, it's even more important. We are regularly monitoring staffing numbers, totals, those individuals that may be off, regularly sick. Certainly, we still have some members who were away over the March break and continue to be in self-isolation. So we're allowing them the time to come back, staying in touch with them, making sure their needs are met. And we are also looking at alternative deployment models to make sure that we have the appropriate staff moving forward. And keeping in mind that this isn't something that's going to be over in the next couple weeks. We're going to plan for the long run here, and we need to be prepared for that. So we're taking the appropriate measures to make sure that we can provide ongoing and consistent public safety like has become expected here in HRM.
Thank you, Chief. There's an opportunity for both Rhonda and Pam if you do have other questions. We've got some capacity here. If you'd like to ask a question, Rhonda, I'll put it back to you if you have question for either the mayor or the chief.
Yeah, thanks very much. I understand, Chief, that you're able to answer questions about our CMP. We understand a ticket may have been handed out by our CMP today against the business not observing social distancing. Do you have any information on that?
Well, certainly I am in touch daily with Chief Superintendent Janice Gray of the RCMP, and we are working very closely together in all of our responses. I don't have any details specifically related to that, and I don't have any knowledge of it, so I can't share anything with you at that time. As you know, we did issue a summary offense ticket yesterday, and I know that we will continue collectively to make sure that we deliver effective policing services here in HRM.
Thank you, Chief. Rhonda, if you have a follow-up question, feel free.
I'm not at the moment. Pam can go ahead.
Okay.
I just had a follow-up question to the answer on staffing. You said you were taking steps to make sure that you had staffing in the long term. Could you elaborate on that? Would that be, calling down any vacations, or what steps are you taking to make sure that going into the future, if we're in this for a couple months, that you have the staffing you need?
Well, certainly in these uncertain times, it's very difficult to make a determination on when you'll need staff, how you'll need them, or whether, quite frankly, any of our members might come in contact with COVID. So I can't get into details of how we operationally deploy, but what I will say is that we are taking all necessary precautions, most notably to mitigate exposure of our officers. It's the same philosophy that we're asking people to take across HRM. Not only the social distancing and no more than groups of 5, those kind of things, but also where we can and where we've been able to make adjustments to limit the regular interaction of officers, whether it be during report writing or any of those things. We have personally gone to, as most people have, in all of our meetings, and they occur every day, to teleconference option, and we often have members calling in, and we observe the same rules as everybody else to the best extent we can, and we will continue to do that for the duration of this issue that we're facing.
Thanks very much, Chief. If you have one follow-up question to that, Pam, we'll take that now, and otherwise we'll close the call in from the media.
Thank you. No, I have no further questions.
Thanks very much, Pam and Rhonda. Thank you, Chief. I'd like to now ask the mayor to return to the podium to say a few words before we end the update from the municipality. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Brett. And thank you very much to Chief Kinsella. Chief Kinsella, Chief Superintendent Janice Gray, and all of their personnel are working very hard through this time to make sure that we do stay safe. And I want to thank all the people who are working, all the folks who are working in the city, whether they be cleaning, whether they be in parks and recreation or transportation, public works. So many people are working. We have a regular call in the morning, every morning at 8:30, that both Chief Kinsella and Chief Superintendent Gray are part of, as well as so many other leaders in the municipality, to keep track of what's happening. And everybody is amazed at how much hard work is being done across the board. So thank you to all of our workers, the transit operators, the police. Delighted, Chief, to see that one of your members tested negative on the weekend for COVID-19. But we're all being touched by this. We're all being touched by this. Just over 2 weeks ago, I came out of isolation for fear of possibly being in contact with somebody who was being tested. So I know what it's like to be at home, but we have to do it. We have to do that. We have to be strong, we have to be together, and we have to recognize that in order for us to come through this the way that we all want to come through this, together for now means apart. And we're enforcing that. And I want to thank everybody who's been a part of that. So thank you very much. We'll continue to keep people up to date as information warrants. Thank you, Brett.